Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another live stream. It's good to be with all of you. It's your host, Danny Dhaiphong, and I'm going to be joined today by a very special guest. Before I get started, though, be sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button if you're new here, the notifications bell so YouTube maybe perhaps will notify you when we go live here on this channel. And of course, you can find all the ways to support this channel in the video description below. But today we are going to talk about and do a deep dive into the axis of resistance given the flurry of aggressions committed and crimes committed by Israel on Iranian territory inside of Iran in Tehran. And of course, the strikes on Beirut. So we are going to talk to today, and I'm going to bring her right in here now. Ghadi Francis. She is a Beirut-based journalist and war correspondent. You can find her on WION. Her X account is in the video description. And I'm so glad to have her on today because of her expertise on this subject. Ghadi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Danny. It's an honor.
Well, it's an honor to be here with you. And this is so important because I've been following developments we've had in just the last 72 hours. We've had Israel bomb Beirut, killing many civilians. Actually, I think the count keeps going up. And of course, seven, yes. Hezbollah.
Seven in the attack on Dahi, but then 5 yesterday, and every day they kill civilians. It's a daily practice for them.
Right. Yes, there has been fighting going on Israel. They say the north, but really it is a continued incursion into Lebanese territory. And of course, one of the top commanders of Hezbollah, Fawad Shakur, was killed. We also had a top negotiator for Hamas killed as well, Ismail Hania, I believe is pronounced his name. So these aggressions have happened in the last 72 hours to a week. And Ghadi, I wanted your assessment because Hassan Nasrallah has given his speech, has said that there will be retaliation, that there's a new phase of the war now with Israel. I wanted to know, because you're based in Lebanon, you have such an expertise on the axis of resistance. What can we maybe expect from here? And can you give some context around what's been going on and how the axis of resistance has been responding to what appears to be Israel's attempt to provoke a much larger war, even as it is continuing its genocide in Gaza?
Well, to start with, Danny, to make it really simple, there's like a brat having a tantrum, a war criminal having a tantrum, and there's wise people trying to manage that. The axis of the resistance has been working wisely, choosing targets wisely, playing something called the diplomacy of war, or the war in diplomacy, where they choose what to hit and how to hit and what message to give and how to actually retaliate with the minimal civilian cost, so that they don't drag more and more Israeli aggression. What is happening since this round of war, because in this region, Danny, the war started when someone came and took our homes, and this happened in the 40s. So even if the whole world looks at the war on Gaza as something that started in October 7, for us, for the indigenous people, for the people who live in this region, I'm sorry, the electricity comes and goes in Lebanon. So for us, the indigenous people who live in this area, the war started and the aggression started the first time somebody came and took our land and our home and killed our children and burnt our crops. This happened in 1948 in Palestine. It dragged on. It happened in 1967 in Golan. It happened in the 80s and in the 50s and in the 90s and in the 2000s in Lebanon. The Israeli entity in the Middle East is made up of settlers. It is a colony. There is no such thing as a citizen of Israel. People who were born here are very limited to the generation that came now. But my grandma is older than Israel. There was no such thing. These are people who came from Europe, from Russia, from America, from all across the world as refugees. And then, with the help of the British and the Americans and the West and the colonization, they became illegal colonization and they split the land. And they started annexing more and more land since then. Today, when you say this war, anybody in this region is not done with this war until they have their rights, until there is justice. There are millions of Palestinians around the world who still have the keys of their homes. So the war will never end until the liberation is here. The war, the big war. If we're speaking about this round of war, which started in October 7th, Lebanon entered in the name of solidarity. This is what Hezbollah called its association with this war since October 8th. And now when Hezbollah started that, there were two points of view out there. Some people were saying, why wouldn't Hezbollah attack? Why wouldn't Hezbollah really help the resistance inside Gaza? Why wouldn't Hezbollah use their missiles and attack and make the Israelis stop because they're killing all these children and doctors and bombing hospitals in Gaza? And there was another point of view that said, why would Hezbollah drag Lebanon into that war? Hezbollah doesn't care about the points of views. They choose for themselves. And I think there is a kind of harmony and orchestration that started not the first day, because Hezbollah really declared, Sayyid Nasrallah declared that they had no idea about the October 7 operation. They didn't know what was going to happen. They entered in solidarity on October 8th. But since then, they have, if we look at Iraq, if we look at Iran, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hamas, Jihad Islami, and all the sides and the entities under the umbrella called the Axis of the Resistance, I think they have managed a way or a system or a harmony or an orchestra of how they would retaliate and how they would play this war all together or separately. There is obviously a kind of synchronization between all the entities. And there's also, I mean, the united aggression, the source of the aggression is one. And the Israelis are attacking all these countries all together. So it's like the Israelis chose to unite us by killing us together. So it was up and down. If you were covering the news since October 7, you would see like every now and then, every month or so, there's the big question, is Lebanon going to slip into a full-blown war? Right? How many times was that the headline of a newspaper in the past 9 months? Many. Because every time Israel attacks Lebanon, and Lebanon retaliates or Hezbollah retaliates, everybody's asking like, where would that end? Is this gonna blow the war? But if we want to think logically, there is only one reason why there's no full-blown war on Lebanon, exactly the same as the one in Gaza. The only reason is that in Lebanon, there's an ability to strike back. There's a kind of weaponry and missiles and expertise and strength and infrastructure. And also, there is the Israeli experience in 2006. They weren't able to annex any part of the land. They used tanks, they used the sea, they used the airstrikes, they used everything. They weren't able to deliver any kind of win. No, they lost. They lost indefinitely. And as we read during that war, and as we learned from what the Israelis wrote in analyzing the war in 2006, they said it really prolonged the time. We're never going to be able to face Hezbollah again, not until 25 years or more. Okay, so there is no possibility for the Israelis to do more to Lebanon, and this is why they're not doing more. And I tell you, it's never going to be a full-blown war because the Israelis have no capacity to do so, not because they don't want to. And I pray for all the civilians all around the world, but I want to tell you that the calculation and the exact accuracy in the retaliatory strikes that Hezbollah is carrying out since October until today is the only reason why we have been able to maintain this momentum in that war between Lebanon and Israel. Had Hezbollah been impulsive and hurt civilians, it would have slipped. We are dealing with a tantrum coming from a war criminal called Benjamin Netanyahu, trying to salvage his political career and his colonizing entity and his face. He's not going to be able to do any of all these three, anyways.
Well, what's so astounding is that this latest so-called escalation, or should we just say continuation, latest aggression from Israel comes after a very mysterious accusation against Hezbollah, saying that in Majd al-Shams there was a missile that Hezbollah shot, which killed Druze, a dozen or so Druze Syrians who live in the Golan Heights, where Majd al-Shams is located. And I wanted to ask you, many people in the audience are probably wondering, because, as you said, the headlines are talking about bracing for war, broader war. The U.S., especially in the mainstream media, they're talking about we need to talk this out. We need to make sure this doesn't happen. What you mentioned, the wisdom of the resistance and the wisdom of Hezbollah in it. What do you think could happen from here? And what have you made of this latest transgression? Because on the one hand, there are some in my audience who say, well, Israel is so powerful. They were able to commit these these massacres and assassinations, and nothing is happening to them. What do you make of what Hezbollah could do? And these kind of, on the one hand, there are some who believe Israel is so strong, and on the other, it feels like Israel's a bit desperate to make these kind of attacks, which have no real strategic significance. I'm curious on your take.
Well, Israel is not strong. The American weaponry, the billions of dollars, are strong. The artificial intelligence, the Starlink that has been implemented for them and aids them in locating targets, that's the smart. That's the strong. Israel is not strong because having all these billions of dollars and all this support from all across the world and all these tanks and all these artificial intelligence and technologies and the Western help, and they still, after 9 months, haven't beaten not 20 square meters in Gaza. There are still rockets coming out from Gaza to them. So they're not strong. Neither are they capable. They're just very well funded and very well supported. That's to start with. Secondly, just for the background, for everyone's knowledge, Israel has been assassinating people since the dawn of history, since the dawn of its history. The Haganah assassinated a Swedish person and the British people. They always assassinate people who don't go with their agendas. I mean, you can go and Google the King David assassination that they carried. They killed. They ended up killing more than 70 British soldiers in the British headquarters in Palestine at the time. It was like, the Israelis always assassinate people to have their way. They always assassinate negotiators. They always kill the negotiator and the politician because they only can do so. The resistance people, they cannot kill. Why haven't they been able to target Yahya Sinwar? I mean, targeting Ismail Haniyeh, a man that is traveling and being the top negotiator. He's traveling to Qatar, he's traveling to Turkey, he's traveling to Lebanon, he's traveling to Iran on the inauguration day of the president, where every single security I mean, it's not really that smart of the Israelis, nor is it really that strong to assassinate a politician in another country. It's just their way. It's Netanyahu's way of trying to widen the war, or to drag the Americans with him, or to drag the Iranians to do something and then drag everyone with him to fight the Iranians and change the narrative and maybe get out of this deadlock that he has put himself into. Because right now we are speaking about a person that is done. A person that is designated by the world, by the highest criminal court in the world, as a war criminal. And I think if we have any kind of democracy, any kind of justice in counting people's views, of politicians, I think more than half the world wants Benjamin Netanyahu in prison or dead. More than half the humans in the world want him to pay for the massacres he's doing in Gaza. If we go and calculate the humans. So we are speaking about this man here. It's even like, so he's done. He's trying to salvage himself, his career maybe, his prospects in the future to solve the Israeli problems inside. He still has a deadlock inside. The far right doesn't allow him to even question the soldiers that rape people, for God's sake. On the other hand, the settlements have been designated as illegal by the United Nations and by the by the ICJ, the criminal court. And on the other side, the hostages' families, he has delivered nothing to them. The goals he has put for himself to eradicate Hamas, to bring them back home, he haven't done any of these goals. What did he achieve other than killing more than 20,000 kids? What did he achieve? Other than carpet bombing Gaza, which is an open air prison aslan in the first place. There's no strength in killing people that are not armed. There's no strength. They have zero strength. I mean, that myth, we used to have that myth in Lebanon as occupied people, and even in our fathers' generations, Danny, they used to call the Israelis al-Jaysh alladhi la yuqar, the invincible army. They used to designate it like that, and we used to believe it. We used to think that the Israeli army is an army that can never be defeated. But I lived in 2006. I was 17 years old. 2006, 17 or 18 years old. Yeah. And I lived and witnessed how we beat the Israeli army. We as Lebanese people in South Lebanon for 33 days remained in our villages, remained resisting, and we really were able to keep them out. They didn't win. So that army stopped being invincible for me, year 2006. And I think it is time for the world to see that this is not a country. This is a theft of a country. This is a theft of a nation. These people that you call Israeli citizens, they all came from somewhere. And if it's not them, their parents came from somewhere. They don't have roots here. They were born elsewhere. They have families elsewhere. They have livelihoods elsewhere, and they have other passports. As for us, we have no other place. This is our ancestors' homes and ancestors' lands. And when they come and they tell you you are being anti-Semite, I mean, Danny, for God's sake, we are the Semites. I am a Semite person. We are the indigenous people of this land. Are you really serious? If there is any, why does Israel ban DNA tests? Did anyone ask? Why? Because come again, we are the Semites. Palestinians are more Semites than Jack that came from Manhattan to take their home in Sheikh Jarrah. I am more Semite than Netanyahu, who came from Poland and changed his name so that we'd forget about that.
I think he lived in Pennsylvania for a while too. I think that's,
yeah, but the name is
American.
Mejlowski
Right.
or whatever. I mean, the ancestry is Polish, yeah?
Right.
Most of them are American or European or Russian. I don't know where they came from, but they are colonizers. This is not their land or their home. It's not about religion here. There's nothing about religion. And I don't think there's a religion in the world that calls for raping people and killing babies. And if so, we would all want to fight it. I mean, come on. Did you see the debate in the Knesset, Danny? They are actually debating whether it's legal or not to rape people.
Right. I know that there was an uproar among so-called the Israeli settlers. There was an uproar about that on the side of the raping.
Sidi Timan, in detention, Palestinians, many Palestinians have filed testimonies about rape and abuse, but some of them were actually hospitalized for injuries because of the rape they've been through. I'm talking about men. And the Israeli police obviously was coming to arrest the soldiers who did that. And the far right protested that. And then in the Knesset, they debated that. So it became a debate whether or not it's legal to rape people until they rape to death. Is this the democracy that you brought to the Middle East? Are we the terrorists? Really? And do we still care what you designate us? Let's repeat it. Let's say it again. This Israel that you are talking about has a debate in its so-called parliament to legalize raping people till death. Well, let's sit with that, and you tell me who's the terrorist.
Exactly. Exactly. I've often heard you say, Ghadi, that occupation was the action and resistance is the reaction, and
Of
you're
course.
spelling out some of the most gruesome realities of this occupation, which doesn't just span Palestine. It really is a regional wide occupation, an attempted occupation. And so I'm curious on, given Hezbollah has, is the primary force of resistance in Lebanon and one of the leaders in the region in resisting the Israeli onslaught and occupation and genocide. How do you see this wisdom playing out in their response from here? Because there has been a promised response. There is this new phase of war. What do you think could happen from here, given all that you've said already in terms of the strategic thinking of both Hezbollah and the axis of resistance?
Well, I think there's one, just the moment the speech was happening, the moment he was saying his speech, he started winning. Speaking about Sayyid Nasrallah, because first of all, it is the most followed speech in the history of the Israeli entity. Everybody was listening to him.
Yes.
Second of all, the evacuation started. They started evacuating all the centers and everywhere. And since the speech and until the strike happens, they are already anxious and afraid. And this is a win in the psychological warfare. And the psychological warfare is a very big trench of the warfare between Hezbollah and the Israelis. Not today, since forever. I mean, I still remember during the 2006 war, Sayyid Nasrallah came out in a speech. We were listening to the speech on the TV. And then he said, الآن انظروا إليها تحت. He said, right now, the ship that was bombing our homes and our people and our capital, my dear Lebanese, look at it burn in the sea, and with it, tens of soldiers who were killing you. And so it was a speech. And then Sayyid Nasrallah, in the speech, announced that the Lebanese resistance was able to defend Lebanon and to defeat the ship that was bombing our infrastructure for the past days. So this psychological warfare, yesterday, it started winning for Sayyid Nasrallah, because he said, you don't know what to do, you're going to cry a lot, and I tell you, it's not going to be only me, everybody's going to have their say. So you don't know where to expect it, from whom to expect it. He said it can be from Palestine, from Iraq, from Yemen. We don't know. We will see. It can be from the east, from the west. We don't know. We will see. You are laughing now, but you will cry. This was his speech. So I think if we want to look back at Hezbollah the past 9 months, they have been delivering intelligence-wise a great war of intel, because the people, there are some missiles with the cameras. The people, the soldiers, the lieutenants that they hit in the Israeli army were known. They knew who they're killing, and they knew when to kill whom. And I think the Israelis did the same as well. The battle between the resistance and the Israelis on that front is an intel and technology and a full of vengeance kind of battle. And although it has been revived now, but it didn't start today. It didn't even start 10 years ago or 20 years ago. This is a war of existence for both. This has always been the borderline and the front line for both. So I expect Hezbollah to do what they always did, to do something wise, as in to make them pay, but to be of zero civilian cost, hopefully, and to give them no excuse to come back again and to attack our capital or to further escalate the aggression towards Lebanon. I think they have been doing great work, great creative work in terms of defeating the Israelis without dragging full throttle aggression on Lebanon. And this is also the Iranian way. I mean, if you can see, it is not unprecedented to have assassinations. Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated and Qasem
Right.
Soleimani was assassinated. You know, the
Yes.
Iranian embassy in Syria was striked. Ahmad
Yes.
Mughni was assassinated. Mustafa Badruddin was assassinated. Abbas Musawi was assassinated. There is no leader of the resistance that wasn't assassinated like that. So we always see different kinds of retaliations, but like I do expect that Hezbollah will keep on protecting the momentum as much as they did for the past 9 months, and for that I am grateful.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and the word martyr comes up a lot, and I know you've spoken about how top leaders, those who are very public facing, especially inside of the Hezbollah organization, they expect death to a degree because that is what they are facing in a lot of ways with this occupation. It is mass murder, it is genocide, it's occupation, it is colonization. So given that, though, you talk about the defeat of Israel. I know that there have been a lot of people who are skeptical of this. We're witnessing this moment where at no other point has the cause of Palestine been bigger on the world stage, has had more support. And you mentioned it too, this coordination. You have Iran, you have Hezbollah, you have Ansar Allah. They're coordinating now, maybe more than they ever did before, had to do before. Maybe it's just more public now that this coordination is occurring. So could you talk about this? You mentioned Israeli defeat. You've mentioned on other programs Israel, its existence is in very much in question, and it won't exist for very much longer. Talk about maybe how this occurred and how then does this wisdom of the axis of resistance come into play? Because a lot of people, when they hear this, they're like, well, then why doesn't the axis of resistance just finish the job? I think that's been a lot of what I hear from my viewers. Why don't they just finish the job? So what do you have to say to that, Ghadi?
Well, things are not that easy or simple. You have a full world order that is protecting them. I mean, are we really forgetting that even the people in the universities have been denied graduation because they carried the Palestinian flag? Or like people with the Palestinian flag are denied entry to different places or sometimes lose their jobs. It's the flag of a country, for God's sake. We've become the underdog to the extent that they're not apologizing to being such racists. I mean, I work in a TV where every Israeli claim is news, but every Palestinian news is a claim. We all do. Everybody like our. Why I don't know why. The only lying part, the only thieves here, the only killers here were Israelis throughout the whole narrative. But this is how it is. I think first of all, it's so beautiful and nice and romantic of people to really expect from the axis of resistance to be able to finish everything, and it is really nice to feel empowered like that and confident like that. And I have this faith, but I think the resistance never worked when it was impulsive. This knowing when to hit and what to hit and how secretive to be is a part of their success, and trying to calculate the next day and the day after and the day after. I mean, we're speaking now, we are sitting 9 months after a full blown televised massacre that has been justified
Mm-hmm.
by total lies. There are no 40 beheaded babies. There is no mass rape. The Israelis killed the people in Nova Festival using missiles and airstrikes. Haaretz wrote that. Everybody knows. It is the whole war was there was the drum rolls, there was the warmongers, there was everybody. Kill them all. Terrorism, terrorism. And it was all a lie and a narrative. There was something on October 7. Hamas wanted to get hostages to swap them with the thousands of Palestinians that are detained without any reason, arrested without any uh, uh, crime. Men, women, children. Do you know how many children have been taken hostage by the Israelis in the past years? You know, you only know Ahd Tamimi because she's blonde. But do you know how many Ahd Tamimis are there in Palestine? Do you know that every single person in Palestine to go to school, your kids would be full like scanned and searched and humiliated and bullied, and it's your land, and it's your father's land. There's an apartheid system. There's a real apartheid system by these colonizers. So what happened on October 7th is still dragging to today, all this impunity and all this audacity, and people like saying kill them all, people like Germany or whatever, like they're supporting the Holocaust again. I don't understand them. Only because this happened. So what would happen if the axis of the resistance does something and drags something? We are talking about a lunatic with a tantrum, a war criminal, a lunatic called Netanyahu that has nuclear power. I don't think it's really, I think it's a little juvenile of us to really think that things can happen that swiftly. And with all the blood and the sweat and the tears and the sacrifices of our people, I think we've always been fighting them. It's not only now. The first martyr, the first person who died, planted the first seed. And the people who are being killed right now as we speak are also more seeds. Every single person is struggling. Every single sacrifice that is happening is a way to the liberation. And I always look at the lesson that we learned from the Russians fighting the Nazis. How many million Russian people died fighting the Nazis?
Right.
Millions, right? They speak about 28 million.
28, yeah.
This is the number, and we are speaking like years and years ago. So the struggles for liberation, the struggles anti terrorism, like Israel, colonial powers and colonization and apartheid systems and racism, these struggles take time. They take blood and sweat and tears, and we all wish things could happen fast and we could get some respite. I mean, you know, I was just having, this is why we were late today, Danny, for the interview. I was just having another interview was being recorded here in the office, and I don't think there's any interview that I have that I don't at some point cry or get tears. I mean, it's not okay. It's not okay that this is happening. It's not okay that this is what we're talking about. Do not normalize it. We're not okay. There's a genocide. There's something even more horrible than the things we've heard about or read about.
Right.
And it's happening right next to us right now. And this is not easy. I mean, dealing with that and being able to still fight and to still be there and to still be confident and to still persevere. This is the light, and this is the path, and this is the respite for now.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are all good points. And sometimes you use the word juvenile. I think there may be a misconception and maybe a misunderstanding based on lacking experience at literal war, not just war as we see it on TV or in Hollywood, or how the United States, where I'm based, likes to portray war. But we're talking about a resistance war, and we're talking about Israel sitting on top of, suffocating, and of course committing genocide on top of the people of Palestine and the rest of the region, as you well know. So that makes it so much. That's why I love when you use the term wisdom, because in order to fight a resistance war against that, you need to have wisdom. You need to look at this strategically and also fight in a different kind of way, because the consequences of an all-out war, I think we've heard it enough from Iran, we've heard it enough from Hezbollah, that they would be just massive. Because, as you said, Israel is nuclear power. I say this all the time on this channel. Israel has nuclear weapons. They are lunatics. No one trusts Israel anywhere in the world, let alone in this region. So, you know, when it comes to this, though, I wanted to ask, you know, Hezbollah and the rest of the axis of resistance, but maybe we can focus on Hezbollah right now. you mentioned something really important, that Hezbollah prioritizes the protection of people, of civilians, of Lebanese, of Palestinians. Could you talk about this? Because I think the idea in a lot of people's minds about Hezbollah is that they are either a terrorist organization, as the US calls them, or they are a militia group that its primary and sole focus is war. So could you talk about maybe the realities of Hezbollah and this important point about Hezbollah protecting people?
I think one of the main reasons why the Americans are failing in implementing their policies in the region is that they do not want to learn about the people they don't like. They just want to impose the descriptions and with prejudice, you know? So I'm not saying that you're supposed to like Hezbollah, but at least research what this organization is, what this ideology is, what do they think about, what do they work for, who they are, where they are, you know, just to understand how to defeat them in case you wanted to. I think in first of all in the whole history of Hezbollah, you can look at how they have been working and how their operations were. I mean, even when they had their leading operations, the operations they take pride in, were addressed and against soldiers and occupation forces. So the United States designates Hezbollah as a terrorist organization because Ahmad Mughniye killed the Marines, but he didn't kill the Marines in the United States of America. He orchestrated to kill them on the shores of Beirut because they were killing people also in Beirut. So for Hezbollah, it's not like they want to go after people all around the world and kill them. They just want to protect the sovereignty of their country. This is their ideology. In general, and in their religious ideology as Muslim Shias, first of all, to be Hezbollah, you must be religious. There's no such way. You have to be really religious. And being a religious Shiite, it has a certain lifestyle. It has a certain method and school and doctrine. And there is a lot. One of the things, for example, is sharing 1/5 of your riches and giving it to the poor. Other marital stuff. But one of the main things also is that if you accidentally harm any person, you have to pay for this religiously and financially and material, and it doesn't go uncalled for. And this, I think, really stems into their way in war as well. And when I say they have civilian lives like importantly, it's not only Palestinians and Lebanese. They also really mind that they are not there. They're not hurting the Israeli civilians if they are civilians, because there are no civilians in this entity. But they are targeting military bases that are designated military or intelligence bases. They are targeting military vehicles or towers or infrastructure. So, and this is how they've always been. It's nothing new. So when we say they don't target civilians, they haven't. Before, they haven't. There's no such thing in their history. So this is why we say they don't target civilians, and their ideology doesn't really say that. The problem is that when you say you think every Islamic, and I think it's very unfair if you say every Islamic group is like ISIS, you know, because ISIS is not an Islamic group. ISIS is a bunch of terrorists that were made and funded by some Arab proxies in the region. But I think the American intelligence has always been very happy about the resurgence of ISIS in places. It's always wherever ISIS is, the Americans come after. It's always like that. So ISIS call themselves Islamic. The Islam comes from a book. Anybody can read the book and start saying, I am Islam, and do whatever they want. ISIS went around and killing people, but we didn't see all this talk about it when ISIS really killed the Syrian people, really killed masses of Syrian people, but nobody spoke about it in the mainstream media because they don't like Bashar al-Assad, because they wanted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad even if ISIS is there. So now they say they have a problem with Hezbollah because they are Islamic. Really? Where did you see them harm you? They only harm the Israeli colonization, and they harm the American the American well-being in colonizing the region. So you're only talking like that because you are pro-American policy in the West Asia or in the Middle East. And let me tell you, I mean, the Americans know, and we know, and everybody knows now in the world what the Americans did in Iraq and how they made all that thing up to come and to confiscate the Iraqi riches and to really destroy anything that is left in the Iraqi community or in the Iraqi state. So the Americans, when they call someone terrorist, they have zero credibility, not only for us in the Middle East, for the world. The era of ruling alone, the singularity, you know, the unilateral world is done. And because it's done, they are doing all this thing that they're doing to Europe and to Ukraine and to themselves, trying to defeat Russia, which would never happen. It's never gonna happen. They're never gonna defeat neither Russia nor China nor Iran. They're never gonna defeat everyone because the unilateral world has ended. They can't even function alone anymore. They can't even manufacture alone anymore. The world has changed, but they still need some time to understand. I mean, Hezbollah is Islamic in the ideology, but it is a Lebanese group. It's born in Lebanon, made in Lebanon, helped by the Iranians after the Iranian Islamic Revolution won. But the people that formed Hezbollah were fighting Israel before it. Imad Mughni was in Harakat Fatah. Some people were in the Communist Party. Some people were in the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. You know, Sayyid Nasrullah's father was in the SSMP, my father's party. It's totally not a religious party. That's in the 70s. So everybody in Lebanon was fighting Israel before it was Islamic. It became Islamic after the Islamic Republic of Iran started funding it directly because they also have an ideology about Palestine. I think it's really time now, after all these things are happening in the world and the world is changing, and us, me, you, and our viewers, we are witnessing the change, the big change and the shift in the world from one kind of system and order to another. It is really time to start doing our own search about organizations and people. Stop buying bullies, because there's one bully in the world called the United States of America, and this bully chooses who's the terrorist and who's not. But nobody in the history of mankind has exceeded the terrorism of the United States of America. The amount of people they have killed, whether it's in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in wherever they go. So it's time to change the narrative, and it's time to tell ourselves, okay, who is Hezbollah? Let me go and do my research. How come Hezbollah has a parliamentary majority? Oh, there are people who voted for them in Lebanon. How come people vote for Hezbollah in Lebanon? But also Lebanon is the biggest nightlife destination in the Middle East. Because for us in Lebanon, for me as a Christian Lebanese in Lebanon, I am very grateful for the Islamic resistance that is fighting and protecting my well-being, my children's well-being, the infrastructure of the country, and my ability to grow and to thrive in my homeland. So it's not really Islam, Christian, Judaism. It's very simple here. Indigenous people and colonizers. That's it.
Very, very, very well said. Now I'd like to talk about Iran, because we hear similar things about Iran. And Iran, of course, Hezbollah is certainly maybe the primary force in Lebanon's government. But Iran, of course, is one of the primary adversaries of the United States, a target of the United States. And of course, Israel has, although it has never been able to get it, has wanted Iran to be taken out, as it has wanted all resistance forces, especially those who successfully take power in government. And so I'd like to ask, given that you mentioned back in April of 2024 the assault and the murder of top Iranian IRGC officials inside of an embassy in Damascus. Yes, that that brought a response. Now we have, of course, Ismail Haniyeh and what happened in Tehran, a very people think it's like, at first I thought it was a strike, but actually it was a bomb that had been planted a long time ago. It was an assassination by bomb, a detonation, WhatsApp.
No, but then again, after that, there's another story of a rocket.
Oh,
So
really? Okay.
nothing is confirmed.
Nothing confirmed. So nothing confirmed, but we are expecting Iran to do something, because they've equated it. The supreme leader, the government has equated it with. Actually, I think they said it was beyond even the crime that was committed on the embassies in Syria. So what maybe both of you could answer, what response can we expect? Also, how does the Axis of Resistance view Iran? Because often it is viewed as the leader of the Axis of Resistance. Is that accurate? And if so, what are the impressions that people have of Iran in this wisdom of the Axis of Resistance that you've been speaking about?
Well, the thing is, we grow up and we learn that every person is different. Well, every state is different, and every kind of policy is different. Iran, yes, is the biggest entity and the strongest entity in the axis of the resistance. It empowers all the other entities in the axis of the resistance. But the relationship between Iran and the entities it empowers is not in any chance similar to the relationship between, for example, America and its entities. What I'm trying to say is that the relationship between Iran and Hezbollah is not that of which do that, don't do that. It's a symbiotic relationship in ideology and in a joint goal. But the Lebanese choose for themselves. I mean, Hezbollah chooses for themselves and they suggest what they want to do. Maybe they negotiate, maybe they aid them in the weapons. But the Iranians do not tell us what to do. And I think it's the same for the Yemenis. And I think it's the same for the Palestinians. And this is why you can see someone like Ismail Haniyeh in Iran and in Qatar and in Turkey. And in Syria, he had a different stance than the Islamic Republic of Iran on the political reason. So Iran does not govern the armed groups that are called the Axis of the Resistance. Maybe because it's smarter than that, because when you call yourself a liberation movement, you cannot come and colonize other people in a different way, right? Maybe because they're smart, they don't do what the Americans do. I mean, the Iranians do not come. We don't have Iranians in Lebanon governing anything about the war. But you have Americans inside Gaza massacring people in Nusayrat camp.
Right.
The Americans are actually changing the diapers for the Israeli soldiers while they're failing and they're defeated.
Yes.
Well, the Iranians send us missiles. Great. Before the Iranians, maybe other entities used to send us missiles as people. So the relationship between Iran and the resistance is not by any chance similar or like comparable to the relationship between America and Israel, for example. But yes, Iran is the leader because Iran makes weapons, great weapons, actually, great drones. We are like living and seeing. And maybe they help, maybe they make the ballistic missiles that can help Yemen deter the world trade line. But they do not tell the Yemenis what to do or how to govern their country. I mean, inside Lebanon, everybody who is pro-America, they're always speaking about how we have Iranian occupation and whatever. Nobody from Iran ever speaks about Lebanese domestic politics, but every Saudi person speaks about domestic Lebanese politics. On Twitter, you have to see them on Twitter. Every Saudi person has a say what I should do in my country. I've never heard an Iranian ambassador or an Iranian minister or an Iranian political leader speak about the internal things in Lebanon. Even in Syria, they spoke very little in the beginning.
It's incredible to hear you talk about Saudis and Saudi Arabia talking about how other people should govern given the state of their government. But I digress. Continue.
No, Saudis about Lebanon? You don't know about it. They had a minister expelled. They had a minister. George Kordahi was a minister in Lebanon. He spoke anti-Yemeni war. They made a campaign, and then he resigned. He was the minister of communication. They bullied a Lebanese minister out of his office. They are that much invested in Lebanese domestic politics. Okay, so the Iranians do not have this kind of relationship. When we talk, well, the other part of the question is, how do you think they would reply? How do you think they would retaliate? In the course of the past 10 years, even before the October 7 operation and before the Al-Aqsa flood started and all that, before all that, the Iranians were really targeting stuff like, we knew it's them or not them. They were targeting ships. They were targeting, I mean, in the Oman Sea, in the Red Sea. There were always like tit for tat between the Israelis and the Iranians, and it's like unannounced war, maritime kind of war. If you go back and you track, and the viewers, if they're interested, you go back and you track in the past 10 years how many tit for tat attacks happened between the Israelis and the Iranians in the sea. And also, they haven't stopped deterring the Israelis in their own way. We cannot come and introduce our way. I will just answer by one very known saying, and one top Iranian politician, a diplomat, told me one time, like, every time we ask about Iran, remember, we have a very nice proverb. It says, الصبر والظفر صديقان قديمان. So Iranians have this proverb that says, patience and victory are my two old friends. So I think they will take their time and they will be victorious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's been the theme, I think, with the axis of resistance, and with the those who, on the one hand, I understand the maybe some impatience, especially those who are witnessing, as you called it, the televised genocide. There's a understanding, why won't more change? Why can't there be more change? But everything that you said does speak to a profound change that is occurring, and you've called it, this defeat of Israel. I mean, Israel is bogged down. I get emotional about the heroic courage of the Palestinian people, not just for surviving a genocide, but the resistance is so it's so valiant and so skillful, and so you can tell the preparations have been made, because
They've been
if
doing
there
it for
weren't
76 years.
so, and just I mean, could you speak to this? Because Israel continue, and the Zionists, and of course the US, they all talk about the axis of resistance as if there's a conflict, if there's a bigger escalation, that they will be able to step in and everything is going to be great, that there's going to be a massive defeat of anything that threatens Israel's existence. I just don't see that. Could you talk? I just don't see that happening at all. And maybe you can speak to this.
I'm just gonna say, is that so? If that is, then what are you waiting for? What have you been waiting for? Did you like us before? Were you not racist before? Did you? If they could, they would, Danny. If they could, they would. They're just very good at talking. And Hollywood and media, it's all made in America. And I mean, they are very skilled in making up the propaganda and make believe stuff. I mean, they have a full entity that is make believe. There's no country. It's a bunch of people that came and stole ours. So they are very good in making up lies and believing them. But we will live and we will see. And quoting Sayyid Nasrallah, you are laughing now, but you will cry a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we can transition to this history that you've been referencing, because I think that the bonds. Sorry, can you hear me?
I thought the time is up. So
okay. No, if you need to go, we can certainly pause
no, we can wrap. I must wrap. Well, you
final
still have
comment.
something you want to know. Yeah.
No, just if you could comment maybe on the history, the bonds, because I think the answer to resistance, people view Hezbollah, they view Iran, they view Ansarallah as together against Israel because of what Israel's been doing. And I think that's true, but I know that there's this long history of colonization that you've spoken about, which perhaps you can help inform our audience about why these bonds exist. Why is it that the axis of resistance is more unified than ever. How does history inform this? Because I know that there's a long history of especially the people of the Levant and the people of the region. So maybe you can close on that.
Well, it's always been bloody. They've always been fighting for this area, and because of this peculiar melting pot of culture and civilization. I mean, I'm very proud of our nation. You can find this mix of people and ethnicities and blends and cultures and we have this different characteristic being here in the center of the junction between Asia, Europe, and Africa. This is where our country is, and this is it's very special. I mean, look at Palestine, how important it is for Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And even prehistory, even when people used to the sun god, you know, Ammon, even during the before even these three religions, this land has always been rich and has always been a land of civilization. If you look at Mesopotamia, it's the first human rights, written human rights by Hammurabi and laws. If you look at the Syrian shores, it's the first alphabet and the first musical notes written, and like it's a musical piece written. It was in Ugarit in Syria, the first guitar in Iraq, in Mesopotamia. This is a very old part of the world that had a lot of culture and a lot of civilizations and a lot of wars. But it was ruled by the Ottoman Empire for like hundreds of years until the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in the First World War. Um, Even during the times of the Ottoman Empire, things weren't really great. There was oppression, there was sectarian, there was poverty, there was like they used to oppress everybody who wanted out, but still it was governed as one. It was still called the Greater Syria. Okay, and then after the defeat of Ottoman Empire, the British and the French, they divided this area. The British took Palestine and Iraq, the French took Lebanon and Syria, and they started implementing certain local rules, and it's all just for, you know, the reason of colonization, wealth to rule, for power, for money, for influence. So if you look at the papers, even when this happened, there was just after the World War One, the Zionism was already preparing itself. And the actual settlements and people coming, the refugees, the Jews from around the world come and make settlements in our land. It started in the 1800s, according to some of the books I'm reading now. For example, there's a book written by Lewis. It's called The Origins of Christian Zionism. It's from Cambridge. I would really recommend that people read it. Or Zionism during the Holocaust. You have to read the backstory of how everything was orchestrated just to come and steal our land. And the people who did it with a system, and they were helped and aided and funded. Zionism worked on it. So even the British colonization of Palestine and Iraq wanted to work and to sell out, and there was like always talks between the British and the French on how much land from Palestine they would take or they would sell, and how much settlements they would build. This was the plan. They did take Palestine in 1948. They did kill all the people and start occupying Palestine, and they have been doing this and killing people and implementing all kinds of terrorism on this land, on the humans, on the infrastructure, on the culture, on the history. They stole our history. This there's some things, please. I mean, it's very superficial what I'm gonna say, but even your viewers don't know. There's no such thing as Israeli hummus or falafel. What is Israeli hummus or falafel? Oh, Jack from Manhattan? It's Palestinian. Even Zaatar, they steal our kitchen, they steal our anthem, they stole our kufiya, they made it something else. I mean, the theft has been ongoing. They're trying to implement something. It's become systematically like that, and since the day one, people wanted to fight. Since the 1948, Lebanese and Palestinians were fighting. They did not have the skill, they did not have the weapons, but nobody took the injustice for granted. Many people were killed, many people were raped, many people were. There was a big exodus. There was a big like diaspora spread all over the region and the world. But still now, 76 years later, we haven't forgotten, and the generations are still remembering, and the oppression is still going on. I mean, maybe had they colonized Palestine and not been an apartheid state, maybe the next generation would have forgotten. But how can you make me forget when every day you beat me up just because my name is that and I was born here? I mean, what is my what did I do to you? You came from across the other side of the world to colonize me, and you hit me every day on my way to school. And you deny they even deny people going and harvesting their crops in Palestine. So when we speak about the axis of the resistance, it started with the beginning of the oppression. In the 40s, it had a shape, and it was aided by some very limited money, maybe, and in the rise of the liberation movements across the world. In the 70s, there was a Nasser, there was a lot of communism and nationalism and liberation movements all around the world, and you could see like the intifadas and the first one and the second one, and of course the rise of the Islamic Republic of Iran changed the whole situation. Now Syria was a very important part in fighting the Israelis, especially Syria 20, 30 years ago, because it was the only country that did not sell. Hafiz al-Assad salvaged the axis of the resistance when Anwar al-Sadat went and signed Camp David as an Egyptian. And then there was the 73 war. So our history is never peace here, because they do not want peace. They want more land, and they want to grab more land. The thing is, Israel has started its own self-destruction, because when they started their colony and in the beginning of the 19th century, and the thoughts, and then in the beginning of the 20th century, the execution, it was a secular idea to grab land and to take and to implement some, even if you read the old Zionists, their ideas, and if you look at the far right today and how their baby Israel really turned out to be, you could see that it is only gonna self-destroy, even if the axis of the resistance did not really interfere. Now, China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, even sometimes Austria, any country that says no to the United States, we feel in this part of we feel like the underdog, and we feel they're being the underdog like us. So sometimes when you speak about the axis of the resistance, even some of the countries that help the cause one way or the other don't have the same stance on Israel. So it's not monotonous, it's not homogeneous, it's not the same shape or size. It's only like we can all hate colonization and have different ideologies. So Syrians, Lebanese, Jordanians, Palestinians, Iraqis, Yemenis, they are all against colonization. They are all against Israel. Atheists, communists, religious, Islam, Christian. Nobody enjoys seeing their kids slaughtered. You have to understand. This is the only thing that Israel does. They slaughter our kids.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up Russia, China, and the broader multipolar world, because there's a lot of support. Obviously, we've seen the Beijing Declaration. We've seen Russia, take stances at the United Nations for Palestine and defending the axis of resistance to a degree, but also they have relations with Israel as well.
They can do a lot more. They're trying to play clean as well. I mean, the Russians could at least help by intercepting all the Israeli missiles on Syria. I wish they would do that. They are present in Syria. I wish they would protect the Syrian skies while they're at it.
Yeah, this is true. Ghadi, it was really good to be with you today. Do you want to, before we head out of here, do you want to just say where people can find you? I put your X account. I don't know if there's anything else you'd want me to put in the video description, but please plug anything you'd like.
Well, thank you. My name is just the same on X and on Instagram, but we're being really oppressed on Meta and by Meta, and I don't know if really it's as important. I'll keep talking to you and talking to all these friends and comrades around the world, and maybe you can reach more people like that, because we are being oppressed even on social media, man.
Totally. Yeah, no, the repression has been absolutely incredible. I mean, especially on this issue, on these issues, on this topic, they, YouTube, all these corporations put the clamp down because they are working hand in foot with Israel and, of course, with its U.S. Um,
But imagine
diaper
all
changer, as you
these,
called it. I love that, diaper changer. Yes,
imagine all these are working with them, and still a barefoot, impoverished, besieged person underground is making a missile that is beating them. Imagine.
exactly. Well, Ghadi, it was great to be with you. I'm going to also head out. Everybody, be sure to hit the video description for Ghadi's X account. I'll put the Instagram in there as well.
Thank you.
All the ways you support this channel are in the video description too. Patreon, Substack, PayPal, and much more. I will be back with all of you soon. And everyone, have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.